Good morning and welcome to another episode of Diving with Captain Sean for a two-part series on Norway. Last time we did Svalbard, and today we are actually doing mainland Norway. I get a lot of requests for what's it like chartering in Norway? Is it difficult? What's it? What are the regulations? All those answers all those questions will be answered today. Just a little bit of brief history on Norway. Uh, Norway um, uh, has been around for a long time. No, uh, of course, talk a little bit about present day Norway. Norway's most of its economy is based on oil. So you would think that a country that had an economy based on oil wouldn't be sustainable, or would be moving away from sustainability, or new methods of creating energy, and that's just not the case. Norway is probably not probably, but is one of the world leaders in sustainability in everything from wind power to solar power. They've got a big initiative to convert a lot of their cars over to solar. There's a great little short documentary, if you go Sustainability Norway, that National Geographic did, and of course, rich with history. Vikings, of course, are a big part, as you see in the opening trailer, are a big part of Norway. And there were even Vikings here on Cape Cod. Actually, yeah, if you go on, this is, by the way, this is being filmed on Cape Cod. The Vikings came here, and you can still find evidence of Vikings on Cape Cod. And they did the same thing that they did everywhere all over the world. They would come and they would pillage and they would steal your food and your women, and then sneak away into the night back into Norway. So so Vikings aside, and by the way, you'll on this charter, on this itinerary, in this kind of faux charter that we're going on, we're going to go visit an actual Viking village. So without further ado, we're going to jump right into it right here. And this itinerary today, brought to you by Worth Avenue. Once again, thank you, Worth Avenue, for letting me take over your channel. And if you're watching, it's a big help to us if you do. I hate it like all the other YouTubers. Smash that like button. But actually, yes, do hit that like button. So today we're going to be taking you from Oslo to Hammerfest. Now, again, impossible itinerary to do in a week or two. It's a lot of territory. Norway is a massive country, but we're going to go hit the highlights and hopefully answer all your questions. Today, joining us will be Ola from Fjord Guiding Services. Ola has been instrumental in both times I've been to Norway. He's done some amazing itineraries going into the fjords, and we'll bring him on in a minute. And also, we've got Vibeke and Arnfinn from Superyacht Services Norway, and they make cruising in Norway easy. So what we're going to do is I'm going to bring up, before we jump into the meat of things, I'm going to bring up Vibeke and Arnfinn, and we're going to talk about the nuts and bolts. So if you're any brokers that if you're on right now, if you have questions, now's the time to ask. Good morning.
Hello, hello.
Oh, I've only got half of you on the screen, so I'm gonna switch this up a bit. So there you go. Now I got both of you on there. Arnfinn, Vibeke, thank you so much for joining me here today on this part about cruising in Norway. So why don't you first of all, why don't you introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Hi, yeah, Arnfinn. I'm Norwegian, living in Bergen, West Coast, and been in this industry now for 15 years. CEO of Alex Big Rig, the leading yacht agent in Norway, and we do some other stuff as well, but now we focus on the super yachts. Been very much hands-on with facilitating the cruising. And with me, I have Vibeke.
Yes, I'm Arnfinn's colleague. been in the yacht industry for 2.5 years. Live in Bergen as well, and yeah.
So now there's a lot of mystery surrounding cruising in Norway. I've got some captains and a lot of charter agents that say, "Oh, it's too difficult." Now there are a lot of regulations in for cruising in Norway, but both times that I've been up there on two very different vessels. I was up there on a 100+ meter, and I was up there on Latitude, which was a 50 meter. And both times you made those experiences smooth and seamless. So tell us a little bit about walk us through. We'll use Asteria, which is our featured yacht today, about cruising in Norway. Asteria will be available for charter in Norway this season. So it's we're just slightly over 50 meters. We're over 500 gross tons. Walk us through clearing into the country, and then say cruising, doing this itinerary, cruising up the coast.
So let's do it a little bit superficial, Sean. There are most of the work clearing into Norway is something that can be done weeks up front. It's a lot of paperwork to be sorted out, but when you're actually here, the paperwork, I like to say, is quite easy. Vessels over 70 meters are subject to compulsory pilotage, which may give you some restriction in your planning, how many hours you cruise per day, and so on. So yeah, it's a sort of a split whether you are less or more than 70 meters length of roll. And then you have maybe another thing that which is a little bit special in Norway when it comes to regulation, being the anchor permit, where we need to do the reporting of each and every voyage, apply for anchorage and report anchorage. Sounds maybe a little bit difficult, but it's something we facilitate together with the captains.
Yeah, that was you helped us greatly with that, even when we had to make relatively quick changes. And for those of you cruising in the U.S., it's similar to filing an NOA, which is a notice of arrival with the Coast Guard. And so Ben Turner is on with us right now. He's got a great question. It's basically, how does an itinerary need to be submitted prior to arriving and approved? Thanks, Ben. Great question.
You need to have an ID, but you don't need to operate on a fixed itinerary like the cruise liners are. For the yachts compulsory for pilotage, some planning should be done that you will have a pilot covering the area you like to cruise, and you might be restricted in last-minute changes in case you go to a different district. But it's never been a big issue, I would say.
No, we were fortunate when I was up there on Bravo, which was 109 meter. We had the room, so we carried 2 pilots on board, so there was no restrictions on how they just rotated out, and they were great for communicating with the locals. And of course, we communicated with you, who would then communicate with everyone else that we needed to. Yeah, no, both times I went up there, I had no problem really getting anything done, even if it was last minute. Now, tell us a little bit about kind of importing. This is a big question too. Is importing alcohol into the country? How does that work?
So yeah, let's start. Norway being on the top of Europe, and even though we are part of the mainland, we are not part of EU, meaning that we are subject to import taxes for many things. Luckily, we are part of Schengen, so when it comes to crew change and visa permits and all this, it's similar to what you do in the rest of the Mediterranean and Europe. So back to the alcohol taxes. Yes, alcohol is expensive in Norway due to the taxation, but it's a simple thing again to do. You do an inventory before you arrive. You keep account on what you purchase locally, and you keep account before departure, and then you will have to pay tax for the consumption.
And so, but you have to pay a tax for even the alcohol that you consume on board, the stuff that you brought in.
Yeah.
So if I had a charter, so theoretically, if I had 10 cases of wine that I brought into Norway and we drank, I had a charter that drank 5 of them, we would have to pay the Norwegian tax on those five cases of wine.
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. Well, that clears it up. And I mean, and again, that you handle, I remember you handling most of that paperwork.
It should be rather simple just to have an inventory with, I guess, what is normal on board, the category, the size of the bottle, number of bottles. Yeah, shouldn't be a big thing. I guess this is something you have full control of already.
Now, is there anything else administrative that you find unique to Norway, or do you think that our audience would like to know about?
We are very much developing when it comes to supplies, but I think it's important to have an expedition mind when you are planning for Norway. If you have all these nice yacht ropes or fittings, or some really, if the chef wants to really make an impression with the fine food, it's not available in every fjords. When you cruise the fjords, when you cruise the northern parts of Norway, you are in a remote location. You have been more remote, Sean, but keep an expedition mind, in mind when you are doing the planning, so you will not have too many surprises last minute.
Yeah, and again, there's supermarkets, like I've been obviously all the way up to the top, and we'll get into that, but I was able to provision everywhere. On the itinerary that will come with this video, which you can get if you signed up for it, you'll get a copy of the itinerary. In the local attractions, there are, again, some different, there's Arnfinn's, there's Superyacht Norway, Superyacht Services Norway, link in that, there's Ola's link in that, and literally those are the only 2 links that you need. I also put in a link for emergency services, like how to dial 911 when you're up there. But again, I can't say enough nice things about your agency. I've worked with agencies all over the world, and you are, bar none, one of the best, or if not the best agency I've ever worked for. And I'm really glad to have you here. But anyway, moving on. So a little bit about Asteria, again, our featured vessel for Norway. Asteria is going to be up in Norway this summer. This is a picture that I took in Greenland last summer on board Asteria. It's got tons of toys. You've got a big Northwind tender. You've got a jet boat. You've got the ribs. You've got jet skis. You've got all sorts of things. Here's its little mini fleet off there. And we do have a touch and go helipad, which make it a really, really great expedition boat. The interior is super comfy. If you want to know more about that vessel, look it up on the Worth Avenue website under charter or for sale. You can, Asteria is available for both. And now we're going to jump right into the itinerary, and we're going to bring up Ola from Fjord Guiding. Ola, how are you this morning?
Good day. I'm very good, thank you. I'm grateful to be here.
You're Norwegian guy. You come with such energy, and like, you're raring to go.
Absolutely.
So our first destination on this itinerary is going to be Oslo, which is the capital of Norway. Now, ironically, I've never been to Oslo. I've always started the kind of the furthest south that I've cruised in well, I've been by Oslo, coming from Sweden and around Denmark, but I've never been up into the fjord of Oslo. So basically, who would like to tell us a little bit about Oslo, and is it a great destination to start, or is it worth seeing?
The itinerary you have made is, of course, following the whole coastline of Norway. So I think it will be impossible for any yacht to do kind of that whole coastline, because it's basically way too long. So Oslo, it's kind of maybe one of the places that people have heard about when they think about Norway. But for cruising matters, we normally recommend to look further west and into what we call the fjords of Norway when you start cruising. But of course, if you have the time, then the capital of Norway, Oslo, has a lot of history, and especially museums, art exhibitions. They have the Michelin restaurants, etc. So yeah, it can be a nice destination to visit, but not on the top 15, I can say.
And that's why we skipped it. When on board Latitude, we decided not to go up that fjord and go there. If you want to see what more to see and do in Oslo, on the itinerary tab, there's a what to see and do. Click that. The Michelin star restaurants that Ola recommended or talked about are on that list. So the next destination is Stavanger, which actually I was there last November. I was visiting a submarine manufacturer in Stavanger. Again, one of those. I didn't find a whole lot to do there, but it would be a good port if I had to go in and fuel or just get some provisions, if I needed a little something to go in there and get. Now, is there anything special about Stavanger that you guys would recommend going to, or what do you think?
Yes, as you said, Stavanger is kind of the southernmost point of what we call the fjord region. So that can actually be a good starting point if you're planning to cruise the whole area. Stavanger has this fjord next to it called the Lyse Fjord, where we have this famous mountain called the Pulpit Rock. Tom Cruise was among climbing it in the Mission Impossible movie. So it's, of course, thousands of people every year that wants to do that hike. And Stavanger is also, maybe the food capital of Norway. You have, of course, also this oil museum, and Stavanger is the oil capital of Norway. So, many interesting things you can do in Stavanger.
I actually had lunch at a Chinese restaurant there, but anyway, that's. And tell us, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Is that the fjord that you were talking about?
No, this is further north of Stavanger. So now you're actually entering the Hardanger Fjord. This is what we call the queen of the fjords in Norway. It's very famous for the fruit blossom in May. Makes it very romantic area to visit. For example, we can have a little horse and carriage taking you through these orchards with all the fruit blossom. In this area, we have two villages. One of them is Rosendal, where you can have a baronial for yourself and with a private dinner. There is also this exhibition center called the Salmon Eye, which is a building floating on the fjord that looks like a salmon eye. And the restaurant there is called the Iris Restaurant. And this is a restaurant aiming for 3 stars in the Michelin guide. So, and
that sounds like a really cool stop. I'm bummed out I didn't decide to go there. Anyway, a lot of neat stuff there. Now, of course, Bergen. This is really where both I would say call it my Norwegian experiences began, both on on latitude and on Bravo. It's also too where you guys are based. Here's a little video of some drone shots that we took while we're in Bergen. That's UNESCO heritage site where those old the old village that's there, and then the cruise ship dock that we took latitude out of. Anyway, so tell us a little bit about Bergen. Again, probably the city in Norway that I've spent the most time in. Something a little, I bet maybe that you guys didn't even realize, but Norwegian fashion. There is actually a small tailor shop that there's a guy there that makes custom jeans. Do you guys know? You know what I'm talking about? Have you know the guy? You don't even see. There you go. I feel like I've been. It's off one of the little shops there. He's a Norwegian fashion designer. He makes custom jeans, custom clothing, and he was trying to get onto the world stage as being a top Norwegian fashion designer. But anyway, is there anything else interesting that you want to tell us about Bergen, or what to do there? Tell us a little bit about the village that you can see in the background.
Yeah, well, Bergen, it's called a gateway to the fjords. So basically, that's kind of the perfect starting point when you're starting a charter or a cruise. You have the big Bergen International Airport that makes it easy to arrive there. And when you will be berthed in Bergen, you will be basically berthed next to this old wharf. So you have walking distance to all these museum shops, good restaurants, of course. You have the fish market in the middle of the center there, where the chef can go and pick whatever kind of fresh fish he wants. And of course, guests can also go to a restaurant there. You also have Edvard Grieg, the composer, where we can arrange a private concert only for the guests.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Yep. Edvard Grieg is a famous Norwegian artist and composer, and just outside the city center, not far from Arnfinn and Vibeke's office, you will find a museum where you can go and both have a tour in his house, but of course a concert. Is also some great.
Now, for those of you who don't know Grieg, you've, especially around Halloween, his music is like everybody's heard it. That Night on Bald Mountain, like dun 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 dun. That's Edvard. That's Edvard Grieg.
Dramatic.
Anyway, so yeah, Bergen again, great stop, great place to provision. It's also good if also your crew needs some time off too. It's a really good city. Flying people in and out, I found that Bergen to be logistically the best place for me to be based when I'm based in Norway. And of course, into the fjords. So, and Ola, this is really where you start to shine. I've got a little video here, which is from which I shot when we were on latitude. This is some of the things that we did when we went into the fjords. Oh, there's me. And then latitude. And then what was fantastic is I could probably get even a little closer to the waterfall, but I didn't want to in this particular thing. And of course, if you've got a drone on board, you can get these spectacular shots going up these huge waterfalls and finally ending in that shot right there. But tell us a little bit about again, I'll let you pronounce these.
Yeah, well, when you're cruising from Bergen and up north, then of course the Sognefjord, that's the main destination. That's the queen of the king of the fjords. When you have Hardangerfjord in the south, that's the queen. Sognefjord, it's the #1 fjord in the world, the longest fjord in the world, except fjord up in Greenland, if you can count that in. But then on the way from Bergen and up to the Sognefjord, you have this archipelago, the coastal landscape. That means it's very good conditions for deep sea fishing, for diving, wildlife, animals. So that's kind of a good stop on the way into the fjords there. And that's also the good thing, is that it's not a long cruising distance from Bergen. So when the guests come on board the first day, we often kind of have a little cruise, let's say for 40-50 miles up north, and then we kind of anchor for the evening and have a first evening on board and kind of get ready to start entering into the Sognefjord.
Yeah, and there's a lot of really great fun stuff. Ola, this is an itinerary that you did for me when we were up there in December. Going in, that's where we focused our cruising on, starting in Bergen and going into Finden, then Gundevin, and then Flam, and then Kaupanger, and then Ballast, and then back to Bergen. And I've kind of recreated that a little bit here with the exception of Kaupanger. Now, up into these particular fjords, the real star in these, of course, is the scenery, but you do need good day trips to go out and do stuff now. And you arranged some really cool stuff for us to do while we were up in those fjords. Can you give us, like, this is Gundevin right here, which is really neat. This is a Viking village that is recreated. That's actually a picture that I took of the Viking king while he was up in that particular village. But can you give us, like, your top things to do while you're in the fjord, from Gundevin to maybe some fishing to culinary experiences? What are the best? What's really great up there?
I think, for example, when it comes to the food, I will not say that this area can offer the best food in the world. And probably when a superyacht is cruising in this fjord, the chef on board the superyacht, he is the best chef in that area for that time. But what we can offer is that we can offer something more than just the food when we take them to one of these restaurants. Then it's more like the total experience, where you have the host of the restaurants that meets you. They tell about, for example, in Balestrand, you go to this cider house where they produce the cider from the apples, and they tell you about the whole process. And it ends up with the owner singing for you down in the cava afterwards. So it's more like the total experience. And this is also one of the other places where we took some of your guests, is up on this farm above the fjord that we actually call the Salmon Estate, where the guests could have done some salmon fishing, and then we did this barbecue of deer up in the wilderness, and we finished the whole evening with fireworks, I remember. So it's more about kind of making a total event, not just a meal, basically. And of course, for the activities, hiking is of course a must in this area. It can be everything from just a nice walk along the fjord, or hiking up to 1,500 meters. Then, of course, you also have some spectacular railways. You have, all these fjords are very protected. So kayaking are, very good thing to do. You can bike along the fjords. And of course, we have the cultural part with state churches. You spoke about this Viking village. Great musicians we have museums in the area. So a lot of interesting things that can be arranged. One thing that you should be aware is that all of these villages are quite small and with limited access to kind of guides, cars, etc. So it's not just to go ashore and expect that there is a big menu of things you can do. You need to kind of plan the things a bit in advance, and then, yeah.
Well, you were great. I mean, even the little fishing expedition that you arranged on board that boat was a lot of fun. And when we went up to Kaupanger to the farm and arranged that barbecue, even that was done. I mean, you really pulled some rabbits out of the hat. And technically, Gundavin was closed when we went there, and you had the Vikings come back and repopulate it. And it was kind of wild. We were the only people in the Viking village, and it was snowy, and we were in a real immersive experience. I think my guests thought maybe the Vikings were a little too real at some point. They didn't think they were going to get out of the village alive. As far as water sports go up in there, like there's the kayaking and stuff. If you, the movie that we did on Latitude called The Highest Latitude, if you want to watch that, that's on YouTube. Just type in The Highest Latitude. There's a whole section that we did on Norway, cruising through Norway and then cruising up into Svalbard. But at the end of that movie, there's we have a great video of us wakeboarding right where that flam, where the beginning of the railway is, where the cruise ship dock is. So you can go. It is cold, but you can go wakeboarding in the fjords up in Norway. Now, I've got on here. Obviously, you're not going to get there by boat. That's more of an inland trip. But I wanted to kind of add something that was a little interesting and maybe off the beaten path. If people did want to get off the boat for the evening, that this would be an interesting destination. So tell us a bit about Øy.
It's actually a destination next to the fjord. It's just in Norway there is places that has the same name. So Øya is actually a place right next to Ålesund.
I butchered the pronunciation on that. I gave it the Australian pronunciation.
But this is a destination where you kind of have this very special Alps, the 12 mountains surrounding this village. And that's also why the people started to travel there, because they wanted to hike these spectacular mountains. And also in the middle of that tiny village, they made this special hotel. So Øy is basically the perfect destination to go for a good hike in the morning, and then you can go to this hotel and have a spectacular dinner, or they have good drinks, etc. So
well, the hotel's got a long history. Sir Conan Doyle stayed there. He was the author of Sherlock Holmes, and it's been around for a long time. A lot of people have gone to there. This picture is a picture actually looking down into the village from one of the hikes that you can take from there. But yeah, really, really interesting, different destination. And then of course, Ålesund. So this was one of the stops that we went into. We had to actually, this is where we swapped some guests out, and we found it was a good spot to do that and provision. We didn't spend a whole lot of time. We hopped in the tender and cruised around in there, but we weren't there for that long. Tell us a little bit about Ålesund.
Yes, Ålesund is also one of kind of the biggest cities in this area, and it's also a city with an international airport. So kind of the ideal route is to do either Stavanger-Ålesund or you do Bergen-Ålesund.
Yeah.
It's kind of recommended to do it that way, not the opposite way, and that's kind of it has something to do with the buildup of the route, because there is a fjord that you haven't mentioned, but the fjord, the Geiranger fjord,
Yes.
it's actually where you got the movie from, where you have all these massive waterfalls, and that's a destination located just east of Ålesund. So that's kind of where everyone just says, "Wow, amazing!" And then
Yeah,
you come to the city of Ålesund, and there, of course, you have Ålesund is famous for its bacalao, all the cod that got there, and you have the restaurants, and of course, you also have some shopping opportunities in Ålesund, like you have in Bergen, and yeah, it's not so much good shopping in the rest of the fjord area. So yeah.
Well, what was cool is like I remember there was a store that sold traditional Norwegian clothing, like the black hats and the outfits that you would kind of I don't know what they were called, but they were for like a lot of the summer festivals, and that the women would wear, and then that the men would wear. And I remember a whole store having all that type of clothing and apparel there. It was interesting.
Yep. So Ålesund is a great kind of ending point of your cruise.
Yeah. Now from here, we went up to again further north up the coast to Trondheim, which and again on the itinerary that we can send, if you want the itinerary, you can email me at sean@worthavenueyachts.com. I can send you this itinerary, and it has a list of all the airports in Norway. And again, that's on that what to see and do button that you can press on the on the tabs there. So tell us a little bit about Trondheim and maybe a bit of the history.
Yeah, Trondheim is fourth largest city in Norway now, and that's also a city that's kind of rich on the cultural part. You see this Nidarosdomen church that you have on your image there. It's probably the biggest church in Norway. And Trondheim is also a city that's kind of try to get more and more good restaurants. And you have maybe the best hotel in Norway called Hotel Britannia, which has a very great restaurant as well, and the accommodation is top notch, I would say. So so that's kind of also a good city to visit. Trondheim is also surrounded by very good salmon rivers. Most of the biggest salmons that are caught in Norway during that season is.
So if we had real fishermen that wanted to catch some fish, Trondheim and around it would be the best place to go. Yeah,
well, you don't basically need to take the yacht to Trondheim, but you can always take a helicopter flight up in that region.
Well, that's the perfect segue. Again, another great question from Ben Turner. Are onboard helicopters able to be used, and are seaplanes available to charter?
Yes, you can. You can bring your own helicopter, and that's something many of yachts have done here in the past years. There are some restrictions in the UNESCO fjords. That's the Nærøy fjord, the fjord into the Gudvangen village, and the fjord, the Geiranger fjord. That means that you're not able to land and do any takeoffs on the yacht when you are in those two fjords. But it's very easy to then just use helipads ashore, and that's basically only those destinations. Of course, it's also possible to charter helicopters locally if you need to transport, for example, guests from one of the international airports, and let's say you have limited days to use, then you maybe want to start the cruise in the end of the fjord, and then work your way back to one of the cities. Then you can fly the guests with local helicopters into the fjords. Seaplanes is also a possibility to charter, but it's not many of them, but it's an option. But normally we use helicopters when we are flying the guests in and out, because there are so many helipads that are located right next to jetties, so it's very sufficient to do that.
Now, this is, and now getting up and getting further north, this is in a lot of some of the islands here that I bypassed. I thought this would be pretty. They would be interesting to visit. But what I really wanted to visit and go back to was Lofoten, specifically for this experience right here, which I think it would be wild, is that up there that you can dive with orcas that are fishing up there. There's a good shot of being able to dive with the orcas. Ola, is that something that you could arrange?
Basically, I'm kind of more fjord advisor. So that means kind of my expertise in the area a bit further south. But our colleague Jason Roberts, that also does Svalbard, he is the right guy to also assist you up in the north. And of course, things like this is something that can be arranged.
Would be right up Jason's alley.
Sorry.
I go, yeah. I would say this would be right up Jason's alley. Would be,
yes. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That would, and I thought that would be the case. We talked on the first section that we talked about on Norway. We talked all about Svalbard. We didn't talk about the Lofoten Islands, which would be pretty spectacular. But I know that this happens in like October, November is for that. Now, our last destination, or one of our last destinations before we get to Hammerfest, is Tromsø, which I thought was a cool little city. We were there for a day or two before we made the jump to go to Svalbard. We didn't actually go to Hammerfest. We left direct from Tromsø. We went up a few fjords and then bolted up to Bear Island and then to Svalbard. But tell us about Tromsø, and is this also was reportedly a great place to go see the Northern Lights?
Yes, that's kind of the capital of Northern Norway, where it's very popular to visit for the Northern Lights. Only thing you should be aware of that the Northern Lights is only visible in the time period from September to April. Because when you start to get into the summer season, you have the midnight sun, so it's basically daylight 24 hours a day. So then it's the Northern Lights are of course on the sky the whole time, but it's just because of the light you can't see them in the summer season. But if you decided to do a winter cruise, then of course Tromsø is great for the Northern Lights, and you also have all this skiing options in the mountains around Tromsø.
Yeah, so you've got the heli-skiing that's up in that particular area. Now, can you do that out of Hammerfest as well?
Actually, heli-skiing is not allowed in Norway.
Really?
No. So that's we are kind of very strict when it comes to vehicles and planes and helicopters out in the wilderness. So heli-skiing is one of the things you can't do. But of course there are options if you take the skis on your back and hike up to the top, like a real Norwegian Viking will do.
Well, that's a great way to end that. Now, this is also that's a picture that we took at latitude just north of Tromsø, right before we were headed up to we headed up to Svalbard. And that's it for our cruising Norway. Is anybody have any questions out in our? Let's see if we have any questions out here for anybody. Thank you, Francois. Anybody else? Now, do you guys Do you guys have any questions or comments before? I mean, again, I can't say enough great things about you, both of your organizations. I could not have achieved what I did in Norway without you, Ola, without you, Arnfinn and Vibeke, and of course your dad, Arnfinn.
Still around.
We got to give him a plug too. So anyway, it was great seeing him, and it was great seeing him in Monaco. He looked like he was going to die in the sun, though. I was.
Oh.
Yeah, little known fact: Norwegians will burst into flames if they're out in the sun for too long. So, anything else? Any final words before we go?
If you're curious, then give us a call or drop us a line, and hopefully we can put most of your concerns to rest and give you some nice ideas what we can offer in this region.
Yeah, it's again amazing cruising experience. I think with. I frankly find the Med overcrowded. There's still places that you can go in Norway where you really feel that you're by yourself, that you're isolated. Amazing.
Good point, Sean. Because when you're on the fjords with either it was Latitude or Bravo, I don't think you found any other yachts when you were cruising. Maybe in one of the cities, but when cruising, you will 99.8% of the time be the only yacht there, and maybe some local small yachts, but you are on your own, and the discretion is high.
Yeah. Ola, any final words?
No, I would just add to what Arnfinn says. Norway is maybe famous for all the cruise ships that cruises around the fjords here, but we know where they are going and what time they are being there, so we can just customize the itinerary so we avoid them. So it's no problem.
All righty. Well, we will definitely see you this summer on Asteria, cruising in Norway. Ola, Vibeke, Arnfinn Senior, I know you're watching. Look forward to seeing you this summer. Again, any questions about cruising in Norway? Superyacht Norway, Ola Fjord Advisor. The links are in the itinerary. And we will see you next time when we're going to be cruising in the South Pacific. So have a great day. Goodbye, everyone.